Hey everyone, it's Emily Graziano, and before I do the Ace Frehley 10,000 Volts video where I discuss my thoughts about the song, the album cover, album predictions, and whatnot, that may be my first video of the new year. Maybe I'll save that for the first video of the new year. I'm not sure. We'll see how things go between now and the end of the year with like Christmas and everything. I'm gonna do a video where I talk about the top 10 new to me films that I watched in 2023. These are not necessarily all new movies from this year, but they're movies that I've never seen. And I kind of stole the concept from Robert Osborne, who said something along the lines of, a movie's not old if you've never seen it. So in turn, it is new to me. Like, I've never seen any of these movies prior to this year. So with that being said, let's just kick it off. And these will be presented in chronological order, in starting with the oldest movie to the youngest movie. So with that, let's get started. Number 1, top 10 new to me in chronological order, we have The Tender Trap with Frank Sinatra, Debbie Reynolds, David Wayne, Celeste Holmes, Carolyn Jones. This movie I didn't expect to like. I'm like, well, it's a 1950s rom-com and I've never seen it. And Debbie Reynolds, she was like America's sweetheart in the 1950s, like the girl next door. So I'm like, so I'll watch it. I'm not the biggest fan of Frank Sinatra. And the concept of this movie, of him being like a playboy, ladies, man, like a songwriter, is dated. But Debbie Reynolds refuses to go out with him unless he changes his ways, and she puts him in his way. She's like, you're gonna pick me up at my apartment, and we're gonna go out to a restaurant that I choose, and it's really, really sweet. I'm like, oh, you go, girl. Like, I'm totally on your side. And to watch Frank Sinatra be flustered and like try to really change himself for the better was really sweet. And I think it was just a fun 1950s rom-com. It's not a musical, despite the fact that Frank gets to sing in it. And I thought Carolyn Jones was really fun. She plays a dog walker. So that was really cool. I just thought it was really sweet. It was a great discovery for me this year. So, The Tender Trap. And that was on 1955, if I didn't say that. Number 2, from 1972, Endless Night, an Agatha Christie adaptation. Shout out to Real Ouija Midget in the film blogging community. This is one of her favorite movies, and I was really surprised by this because I'm like, oh, well, Haley Mills as an adult, that's the draw. And it is, but the plot is so psychological that you need to watch it more than once. In fact, I've only watched it once. I probably should watch it again. But I really enjoyed it. It's one of the lesser known Agatha Christie adaptations, but it's just as good as any of like her well-known, I think. And it's just a really, really interesting plot. The cast isn't like super famous, like Hywell Bennett. Like, I don't know anything else he's been in. And I think, if I remember correctly, he passed away. But this is just an interesting movie, and I'm so glad I have it. I'm so glad that I watched it, and definitely one of the underrated movies from the 70s. Like, that ending, you're like, what? And then you try to go back and think, well, and you're like, whoa. So I think this was a great psychological movie that is just totally underrated. Okay, from 1975, we have up next The Great Waldo Pepper. Shout out to my very good friend who also loves Bob Redford and the Video Archives podcast, because they talked about this movie. My friend heard about it, told me about it, and said, hey, Em, you gotta watch it. And it actually brought the movie back to my attention because I heard about it maybe 4 years ago. I'm like, oh, I'll watch that one eventually. And then my friend brought it back to me, and he's like, okay, yeah, now's the time. You gotta watch it. So this movie is great. Robert Redford is the second greatest flyer in the world, aviator in the world, Waldo Pepper. And it's a movie set in the 1920s, in that time, the interwar period, after World War I, but before World War II, and these aviator pilots in World War I try to hold on to their former glory and what they will do to hold on to that status. It is fascinating, underrated. Talk about a movie that gets lost in the shuffle. This movie is definitely worth checking out. Other cast members include Susan Sarandon, Bo Svensson, and Margot Kidder. Directed by the director of The Sting and Butch Cassidy, this needs to be seen because it's highly underrated. Definitely worth checking out. If you want to check out the Video Archives podcast, that's a good place to get some information about it, but maybe not to start off because it is not spoiler free. But yes, this movie for sure. Okay, up next, from 1979, The Electric Horseman with Bob Redford and Jane Fonda. This movie totally surprised me. I don't really like modern day westerns, but I do love Robert Redford, and I like his bond with horses, and he works so well with Jane Fonda, and this is with his mentor director, Sidney Pollack. You can't go wrong. It's romance, not just like traditional, like typical romance, but it's like romance with the environment and the land and caring about animals and letting animals be free. And it's just really, really great. I was so surprised by it because I'm like, well, so I totally love this movie. So much so, I got a copy for a friend, and I hope you, when you watch it, enjoy it just as much as I do, because it's definitely one of Bob's best performances. He's so comedic, which he didn't get to do that much, and at the same time, he's sassy and serious, and I love this movie. I can't wait to watch it again, seriously. So, Electric Horseman. Up next, from 1980, the movie The Mirror Cracked, another Agatha Christie adaptation. This, to me, is like the definition of 1980s fun. All-star cast, Rock Hudson, Dame Elizabeth Taylor, Tony Curtis, Geraldine Chaplin, Dame Angela Lansbury, future Bond, Pierce Brosnan, I believe, appears in this movie as like a waiter or something like that. Like, it's a brief scene, but it's like you spot him, there he is. So that's really fun. So, dynasty level cattiness, English style, meta movie within a movie, actors feuding, taken from. They take inspiration from actress Jean Tierney's real life and place it in this movie. And then on top of that, the meta movie within the movie is the Tudors versus the Stuarts, Mary, Queen of Scots versus Queen Elizabeth I, Elizabeth Tudor, daughter of Henry VIII. So all that drew me in, and it's just really fun. I think this is an underrated movie of the 80s, definitely. So much fun. Up next, from 1983, it is Brainstorm, Natalie Wood's final movie. I had a lot of reservation going into this movie. I'm like, well, she died during production. They had to change the ending. It's sci-fi. That doesn't always date very well. I don't like Christopher Walken. All of that. But this movie is so ahead of its time. It warns us about the dangers of like technological devices taking over our lives. And for 1983, I think that was very, very forward-thinking. And I think it still has a lot of teachable lessons in it that we can apply to today's world. And Natalie, I think she really knew how to pick her scripts towards the end of her career and know what is good, what is good for her. And I just, it makes it all that much more sad to know that she passed away during this production, and what could have her career been afterwards and everything like that. So, Brainstorm definitely requires more than one watch, and I'm so glad I have it in my collection. And Christopher Walken, like I said, I am not a fan of him, but his final scene, like, I don't want to spoil what happens, it's so powerful. Like, you feel the human condition when watching that scene. Like, everybody at one point would think about, like, oh my god, what would I be like in that situation? And I think that's a very powerful moment. So yeah, Brainstorm, everybody. Up next, from 1996, the year I was born. So this movie came out in the same year that I was born, but I've never seen it until I was 27 years old. I can't believe it. Up close and personal with Robert Redford and Michelle Pfeiffer. Oh my god, I loved this movie so much. Here's an interesting fact. Robert Redford was a leading man in the movie Inside Daisy Clover in 1965. That was the year my mom was born. And then in 1996, so 31 years later, he's still playing the romantic leading man. There is a certain type of actor and a certain type of man that can pull that off. And Robert Redford is one of those. Like, Cary Grant is also in that class, definitely, where you can play the leading man 31 years later still and be like that romantic leading man. I love this movie so much. It's like Network put in a blender with A Star Is Born, but that's an okay thing with me. I thought it was romantic, dramatic, comedic, all around a good script, and they were so magical together. Like, I thought they worked so well, and Bob is really sassy in this movie to begin with, and it's just the funniest thing ever, so I love that. I love this movie. I will recommend this movie. Oh my god, I may do like a separate video about this movie because I love it so much, but up close and personal. Up next, from 2008, Revolutionary Road, the Kate and Leo reunion movie. I remember the hype about this movie when it came out when I was 12, and I wanted to see it. I am very glad I didn't when I was that age, because this movie really is made for adults. It's very mature, in the sense of if a child watched it, they would be very, very bored. It doesn't hold drama for... the drama doesn't hold the attention span of a child, and it really is driven by, like, adult scenarios of, like, marriage and are we gonna have kids and, like, suburban life and the 1950s gilded cage, if you will, how it looks picture perfect, but there's a lot of all these issues going on beneath the surface. If you like Mad Men, this movie is definitely something to watch. And here's the thing. Kate and Leo make this movie work because it's Kate and Leo. If it was a couple that had no chemistry, you wouldn't care about the marriage breakdown portion of this movie. You'd be like, who cares if they break up? But because it's Kate and Leo, you're like, oh, come on, they have to make it. They have to make it work. So I think that was great on their part, because it's like you want them to work out. You want them to stay together, and it works really well. So I'm glad I was an adult the first time I watched it, because, again, as a child watching it would be so boring. And just knowing more about, like I said, 1950s life in suburban America during that time, it's fascinating. So definitely, like, if you don't have time to watch Mad Men, you don't want to commit yourself to a show, this kind of presents the same mood and atmosphere as Mad Men. So, okay, up next, it's a movie made not so long ago, Top Gun Maverick. I'm not a big fan of Tom Cruise, but I do like Top Gun. And this movie, the sequel, is how you make a sequel after 30 years. Like, the characters were, like, on a natural progression. It didn't feel weird or out of place. The new characters felt seamless. It was very real with all the aerial scenes and the pilots and the aviation and everything. It was just really, really good. I was very surprised how much I liked it. But I liked the first one, but this one was just as good. I'm not a big fan of Tom Cruise, though. He's kind of weird, but this movie was really, really great, and I'm really glad it was. And finally on the list, it was a movie that came out in 2023, Spinnin Gold, the Neil Bogart story about Casablanca Records. Yes, everybody, I had to mention something related to Kiss in this video. But this movie goes beyond Kiss. It's 20th century America, rags to riches, one man against the odds, the underdog story of how he helped create Casablanca Records and in turn helped create some of the most iconic music of the 20th century, the latter half of the 20th century. So even if you didn't get to see this in theaters, I did not. It was pulled quickly. I definitely suggest watching this movie, Kiss is just the cherry on top. It's like, oh, yes, it talks about Kiss, too, so I think that was really great. Who cares about the box office? Who cares about the critical reviews? If you want a human story, this movie is definitely something you can't miss. So, there you go, everybody. Just a small snippet of my life at the movies in 2023. I hope you all watched some good things this year, both on the small screen or the big screen. It doesn't matter. And I hope next year I can do this again, like do top 10 new to me in 2024. So, I will see you all soon in the next one. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. Bye-bye.